evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for Grace in the Midst of Loss, a critical conversation on grace and sisterhood. Again, I thank you all for coming. In a moment, we will introduce you to our panelists. I want to welcome all of our guests for joining us today. We really do believe this is an important conversation. I am Latifa Miller. I am the president of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated Gamma Alpha Tau Chapter, which is basically the Penn Hills and surrounding areas. As a member of Zeta Phi Beta, I stand on the shoulders of our founding members. Without them, we would not be here. They have blazed the trail, and we are honored to continue their work here in our community. We are proud of our 26th International President, Dr. Stacy N.C. Grant, as well as our regional and state leaders, the Honorable Beverly S. Tatham, our Regional Director, and Olivia Miller, our State Director. As I stated, I am the president of our chapter here in Pittsburgh. And tonight, again, we are here to talk with our panel to discuss grief, mental health, and sisterhood and the impact that it has. We know that these things have impacts on our community, on our families, on the churches that we go to. And so it's an important opportunity for us to spend this time having this conversation. We are delighted to be having this conversation along with our sisters from the Divine Nine. They are all professional mental health professionals. They are experts in their field. They deal with Black and Brown women and families every day to help combat some of the things that we go through as communities, to address communal grief, as well as helping us make sure that we are leading and serving and showing up for others. So, on our panel tonight, our panelists are with us. We have from Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Dr. Erica Givner. Welcome.
Thank you.
We have Letitia Lewis of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, and we appreciate you being with us tonight as well.
Thank you.
And we have Cheryl Lewis of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority.
Thank you for having me. Super excited to be here.
Absolutely. You know, we recognize the work that we do, and we know that collectively we are stronger together. So I am super grateful for all of you taking your time out to be with us tonight. So I just want to start with talking about, you all as mental health professionals and members of the Divine Nine, you've seen the strong woman or even the strong Black man persona firsthand. I'm a firm believer of saying that superwoman cape will choke the life out of you if you're not careful. And so understanding the importance of taking it off. At times it's necessary, but at times we must take it off and we must have that balance and we must have that rest. But how does this cultural mandate to remain unshakable complicate the grieving process? And what are some of the physical and emotional signs that you all encounter that when we mask what we really have going on and how it becomes a health risk to those in our community? So I will start with you, Cheryl.
First up. So definitely I feel like, of course, the strong Black woman, the strong Black man persona is something that we still are suffering from today. Are we trying to bring more awareness to it? Absolutely. Of like, you don't have to always be strong, but it's something that has been ingrained in us for so long, right? So I think, of course, like when we are masking like the signs of, the things that we're going through, we're actually being more of a detrimental to ourselves than we actually realize, right? So, by you just kind of forcing yourself through, putting you in spaces that maybe you are not ready to be in, you're doing more detrimental not only to your health, to your own mental, well-being, physical. You can start to have those physical signs that come up because you're just trying to go, push yourself through. So I personally, when I'm working with my clients, I'm like, who's telling you you have to be these things, right? Is it you that you're still putting that in your mind, or is somebody telling you, well, you have to do A, B, or C, or you have to still push through. So I think that's one thing that we have to start like really understanding, breaking through to say it's okay not to be okay and not to be strong all those times.
Absolutely, absolutely. And can you tell us a little about who you are and how you serve in mental health in the community?
Yep. So I am a clinical therapist. I have my LPC. I worked for Forward Wellness Counseling and Consulting Services from my practicum all the way up until I received my LPC. And now I'm going to be transitioning to PAR, which is Pittsburgh Action Against Rape. So I do a lot, especially when I was in private practice. As you know, there's not a lot of Black clinicians, and I was one of the few Black clinicians in my private practice. So if anybody asks for a Black clinician, of course, I was the one that was given them. So that's one reason why I really got into being a therapist, is because I knew we needed more people that looked like us. And I always said that I wanted to be the person I needed when I was younger. So I try to get out and do stuff in the community. And that's also why I became, of course, a member of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, the dynamic Delta Phi Sigma chapter, because I wanted to not only do stuff in my work, but also in the community with my sorority. So
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing it. I think it's important to understand the communities that each of you serve in. And we all know that sometimes when we're struggling, we do so in silence. We're not always very bold about the kind of supports that we need. And sometimes we don't seek the resources that are readily available to us. But out of that shame and that guilt, sometimes we're so busy trying to be the strong person that we're not willing to say, wait a minute, I need a little bit of support. And so, what that leads me into is that leading while leaking. In the work that I do personally, that is where I see the exposure of what's happening in our community so much. And so, many members of our organization, they hold high leadership roles, they're very visible. So, how can leaders practically hold space for their own grief without neglecting their personal responsibilities? Like, how can we lead authentically when we're walking through our own valleys of loss and our own things and our, just trying to maintain our own selves? And so, Dr. Givner, if you could speak to that.
Hello. Once again, thank you so much for having me. Yes, so speaking to that, you said leading while leaking. I always say my first thought when I think of leading while leaking is being able to, first of all, first and foremost, just acknowledge the fact that we're going through something, right? That's literally where it begins. If we're not brave enough to even acknowledge what we're going through, then ultimately we're not going to be able to address any problems that we have. And so, first of all, that's where it starts. And then, oftentimes, when we are acknowledging those things, then I just think of me as being a clinician. I think I hold myself to just a little bit of a higher standard regarding, like, for lack of a better word, expectations on what I should or shouldn't know. And so when I think about that, I'm thinking like, okay, we all know cognitive behavior therapy. Everything starts with a thought, feeling, and then behavior, right? And so what am I thinking regarding my losses, right? And then what is the behavior and how is the behavior showing up? And then what is my feeling towards the behavior? What are my feelings towards the thought? And then how my behaviors impact that. And then oftentimes I'm extremely busy. I wear many, many, many hats in any given day, between running a business, between being a grandmother and a mom, a wife, things like that. And so I often say I need to be able to take that time out for me. And whether even if it's taking the time out for me, putting it in my schedule, because I often tell people, even my clients, that most people meet their appointments when they are scheduled, right? And so oftentimes I will schedule that time. I will schedule that massage. I will schedule that time that I need to like sit in the car, give myself that grace, put me a lunch break in, ask for help. I feel like my first step, I did that. I heard you speak about it a little bit a few minutes ago. Is like I literally, after running this business for, over 12 years, just hired an assistant. And so I didn't even realize how much I needed an assistant, right? Until she came. And I was like, oh, wow. Like People would tell me all the time that I needed that support. And so I took the leap, trusted somebody, and it seems to be working out fine. But I also think, like I said, I really need to find a place to be able to acknowledge that space, ask for help, notice when I'm being really tired, take a nap. I don't know about you, but I was raised in a household that naps was just not a thing. It was just not a thing. We weren't allowed. It goes back to like that strong woman, strong man thing. And I don't think my mom intentionally said, be strong. It was, I think for her, it was more or less like, you're not taking no nap because I need you to go to bed at night. Right. And so that led to me as an adult to just not understand what rest meant and how, I can accumulate, for lack of a better word, rest debt. Right. And so I would work so much and have all of this rest debt. And I'm like, I'm so tired. And then I eventually pass out. And so eventually I was like, okay, if I'm tired, I need to take a break. And so acknowledging when you need that support, leaning into the fact that you need that support, and then taking that support is what I say around being able to address those losses and still functioning at a high capacity. And not to mention, I would just lie if I don't tell you, but I have my own therapist, right?
Mhm.
And so I absolutely have my own therapist. I've been in therapy, I don't know, probably for the last 20 plus years. I love my person. And so I tapped into that as well, not to mention that I am a therapist. And so I think that as well is helpful. And most people think, oh, every therapist, have a therapist to talk about their clients. Absolutely, I do not. I use my time to talk about the things that I am struggling with, the things I want to evolve in, and the things of how I want to be better as a mom, a wife, and a grandmother. And so I use that time as well to take better care of myself.
Thank you. I appreciate the truth in that. There were so many nuggets um, about having that balance and understanding to the root of where some of these things come from, and not so much blaming, our elders, but understanding the perspective in which they came from. They didn't have some of the luxuries that, well, we consider them luxuries, but they didn't have those things, so they had to do what they had to do. So I appreciate you tapping into that. Can you also share a little bit about the work that you do and the space that you represent in mental health in the community?
Yeah, so I'm the owner and clinical director, lead clinician of Vision Towards Peace Counseling Services. We are located here in Wilkinsburg. We are literally an outpatient mental health psychiatric clinic. We hold the same license as Western Psych. And so we do have psychiatry. We just hired another CRMP, and we do outpatient mental health. Not to mention, within the last 2 years, we've just gained a CYF contract to whereas we go inside the homes and do coach parenting. And we also have a program that we do restorative parenting. And we attempt to bring children back home out of foster care. That's our goal, safely back with the biological families. And to date, we have brought over 25 children back home to their biological families. And we're very proud to say that. It's hard work what we do working with the CYF contract, but we get a lot of wins in that space. But also Vision Towards Peace have a blended case management service, and that we also offer blended case management to the clients that are being seen here receiving outpatient mental health. And I
Thank
belong
you.
to I belong to Alpha Kappa Alpha. Thank you.
So that part. So again, I thank you, and congratulations on the reunifying of children with their families. Because at the end of the day, that's the point, right? The point isn't to pull them apart. The point is to bring them back together. So to be able to say that you successfully done that for 25 families is hats off to you all in the work that you do. You're welcome. Um, so I want to talk about the theme of this conversation, which is grace in the midst of loss. We're living in a world where a lot of things are going on, right? So you think about the global community, there's a whole lot going on. You think about just what's going on in America, the states, DEI, just all the things. And then Pittsburgh is its own little unique space with its own intricacies going on. And the political stuff happening here, the draft is coming, just, all the things. There's a lot of things happening in the spaces that we're in. As members of D9, then we have those things that are going on in the communities that we serve in inside of our own organizations. And so with that, there's a lot of grief and there's a lot of angst and there's a lot of emotions that go on as we're trying to manage and navigate and still do it with our chest held out and chin up and, looking all put together as we are. And so, Tish, I want to ask you about, with the theme of this conversation being grace in the midst of loss, what does showing up look like when words are not enough? So, how can we be better at seeing our sisters when there's nothing to hear? She's not saying anything. How do I see her? And how can I extend grace to her when she might be grieving quietly and she's withdrawing herself and isolating herself? She's getting busy in the things, right? All the good things. She's doing what she's supposed to do, but she's isolating. How do we help her? How do we address that?
Well, first, hello. You want to make sure that you're not taking her silence as rejection, first and foremost, right? Being silent, being withdrawn doesn't mean like I'm rejecting you. I no longer value the bond in our sisterhood. I no longer, want these relationships, first and foremost, right? Because we all grieve differently. We all go through the processes differently. It looks different for everybody. So like you said, showing up doesn't always necessarily mean words, right? Because sometimes we don't know the words. Sometimes people don't want to hear it's going to be okay. You'll be all right. How many times do you hear that and you're like, okay, I don't want to hear that. So sometimes not saying anything is enough. You know what? I don't have the words. Respect that. I don't have the words because you probably don't, right? And you want to mind those boundaries and you want to mind those limits with folks where because you don't want to overstep. Again, the whole idea of you'll be okay is, you'll be fine. I'm here if you need me, but if you don't really mean it, don't say it. Right. So it's one of those moments where, be very, very, very genuine in your approach. Right. Be very realistic with what you can do. If you can't do anything, that's fine. But sometimes that silence, I'm here if you need me, if you just want me to sit next to you, that silence can sometimes speak volumes to someone. Just knowing someone's there. The consistency and Latifah, I have to say, you do this, Marin does this, just thinking about you. Thank you, sis, right? Because I withdraw a lot. You guys know that, but it doesn't mean that I don't care. It doesn't mean that I don't value our bond. It doesn't mean that I don't want the sisterhood. It doesn't mean that I don't want someone to check in on me. I appreciate that, right? So again, just that showing up in those very subtle 10-second text messages, I'm thinking of you, sis. With the sisterhood and all the things that we do, the invitations of things, right? I'm having something happen at my house. If Tish is not going to show up, I'm going to invite her anyway, because that makes my heart smile, right? And I think a lot of my sisters know that. Like, I'm going to invite Tish. She probably won't show up, but man, she probably appreciates that invite. Thank you, right? So again, just keeping it in rotation that like we're still thinking about you. You're still in our hearts, and when you're ready, you're ready. I pop back out. She'll pop back out. It's just I want to keep reminding her that I'm there. We're here. And again, that silence, that withdrawal doesn't mean I'm rejecting you guys. It's just, I just need my space. And that time could be whenever that time is. And you don't want to put a time limit on it. You know what? Time is up. She needs to stop grieving. Not true. Not true. So that's my response to that question. Keep showing up.
Keep showing up. Keep showing up. And I love that. And I love it because as strong as we are as Black women, sometimes we can be very hard on each other. Sometimes we can be very judgmental of each other. We, our tolerance is like this long. She ain't called me back. you
Yeah.
know, and then we're in little clusters talking about it. Did you see? And she didn't. Well, I saw on Facebook that she went to such and such, but she didn't come to
Right.
my. And we're just out like, whoo, give
Mhm.
your sister the grace that you would need.
Mhm. We
And
assume a lot. We
we
assume that
assume.
silence, right? We assume that rejection. Like we draw a conclusion without knowing any of the details of what's happening.
Hmm. And not
Absolutely.
taking the time to ask, not taking the
Absolutely.
time to find out. So when you said that, don't you led with withdrawal does not equal rejection. And I
Right.
think that that's so powerful because that assumption is often made. It's
Right.
often made. We've all been guilty of it, but we all need to not do that. And so, Tisha, if you could tell us a little about who you are and the work that you do in this mental health space in the community.
So I am a mental health therapist, community based with Glade Run Lutheran. It's probably about 8 years with Glade Run, but 14, 15 years as a mental health and drug and alcohol therapist. I'm also a certified professional life coach in all things related to friendships, intimate relationships, and things of that. I I am also the mother of two boys. So, to keep my mental health intact, those things, that's where that withdrawal and that silence often comes from. But again, it doesn't mean that I'm gone. It just means I'm busy. Um, I do have a nonprofit called the Blackout Project, working in some of the school districts. I'm sorry, with the Propel schools in the Red Rock Hills, North Side. Took a break this year, currently working on a project with Akita Donald with Mastery Collective, which is also mental health with athletes in the districts. So we're working on a bigger project with that, bringing more awareness to mental health with athletes and what that looks like for their families and for the young people that we serve. Um, and yeah, working on a slew of other projects with consulting and all the things. I am community based wholeheartedly, so that is me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. It is we all wear so many hats. And to add on choosing to be an active member of one of the D9 organizations, some people are like, how in the world are you going to do that? Why are you don't have space and time in the day? But
Time
I
out. I am a Zeta,
yes.
like Dr. Givner. That part. Yeah, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated.
Yes. And so, some people think we're crazy. Like, how can you take on something different? How can you? But for me, I kind of say, how can you not? Because this work sometimes allows you to have opportunity in spaces that you might not ordinarily have the opportunity to be in. It allows us to have that safe space inside of sisterhood because sometimes you do come across women that you recognize. Dr. Givner said it, having somebody to talk to about what's going on with you. Some women don't, they're not finding that outlet in any way in their lives. They don't feel it at work, they don't feel it at home, they haven't established those relationships in the community. And so sometimes our presence in those spaces allow us the opportunity to see something and to be that rock for somebody else. And that is what I have found. All of our organizations, we also deal with collegiate women. And sometimes, and I think, some other, our moderator, our IT tech is in the background when we're in, but when we're dealing with our youth, a lot of times, well, they're not youth, they're youth to us because we good and grown, but our collegiate women, a lot of times we're having side conversations like something's going on with her. Something's not okay with her. We need to dig a little bit deeper into that. And so while we get to do a lot of work in community, I think that we also bring a lot to the table for each other inside of our organizations. So I do appreciate all of you telling me what you do and where your spaces are. So, speaking of the D9, our organizations are historically service based, right? That's kind of like the root of our why is to make sure that we are advocating in community for areas of injustice in different arenas to make sure that we are helping our communities be seen, be heard, and thrive in the areas that are necessary. So, from a clinical perspective, how can our organizations pivot to be intentional about being healing oriented spaces. So, what type of changes or boundaries are necessary to ensure that our organizations are supporting mental health wellness inside of the communities that we serve? And any of you can chime in on this one.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
You agree? Okay. I think one thing for me to say is like we as our organization kind of just went through this with the loss of one of our sorors. So of course, what is our job? Service. So of course, we reached out to the family. We weren't sure kind of what was needed. And then finally, once we got all of the information, it was kind of like go mode, right? Of like what we needed to do to help. But we also had to realize like we still needed to heal, right? Of course, like, yes, the family was going through, but we also lost a soror as well. So it was kind of like, I think the thing to bring into the organizations is like everybody doesn't heal in the same way, and everybody doesn't work through grief, trauma, all the things in the same way, right? So for me, I've been dealing with grief since I was probably about 4, right? That was the first time I ever lost anybody in my life. So it's like my dad's a pastor, so I have been at a lot of funerals. I've been in settings where it's like I am the usher helping family kind of just like go through that. So for me, working through grief is easy. So when my president was like, "Hey, can you kind of step up in this?" I was like, yeah, great. But you have to also understand that just because other people can do that, that doesn't mean that every sister can. So I think that's one thing of it's more of those check-ins with your sisters, right? Yes, we are in the idea of service, of course, like whatever we can do for our sisters. But if you don't have the bandwidth, right? If you can't be in person helping at something, that's fine. Is there something else that you want to do that will allow you to heal, but also still give that service aspect? So of course, we had some of our sorors that were like, I can't be there physically, but I can be there monetary. Here's donations, here are things. So I think kind of that healing space is reminding ourselves that every person is different, every sister is different. So we're all not going to navigate it the same way. So back just having that openness instead of, like you said, Latifa, of like, we're women. What do? We get angry when like one person is like not holding their weight or stepping up. And it's like, well, we don't know what they're going through on the other side, right? They could be going through a whole bunch of other things as they're trying to navigate this grief. So I think that's one thing is that we have to remember that we are a people at the end of the day. And yes, we're here for service, but we also need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, pouring into ourselves so that we can pour into, the community or pour into our sisters if they need that. So.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. I often say that, within our organizations, we show up in many ways. So I show up as a sister, I show up as a servant, but I also show up as a woman. And all three of those parts of me need to be touched. It's not one focus. So I might not be able to show up as a servant because of what I'm going through as a woman. And we have to consider that. Dr. Givner.
Thank you. So I'm not going to be that long with it, but I think again, I'm just going to just go back to acknowledging, right? I just think acknowledging, bringing things into existence is always the key around healing. And so when you think about organizations and what we can do as D9s and what that looks like for our organizations is I don't know about y'all, but I just noticed that since COVID, we've experienced just an extraordinarily amount of losses, deaths for just all kinds of things, sickness, right? And so to me, I think like when we look at just our programmings that in our spaces of our meetings, we just continue to hold spaces, silent prayers for the people that we lost, right? Like regularly making spaces of remembrance. Because I feel like if we create space that we allow people to talk about who we lost, it allows us to regularly, like as Cheryl just said, like go through it a little bit easier. But the minute that we can't have space to talk about what we are experiencing with a loss of anybody, it allows us to create more masks, similar to the first couple questions that was asked earlier. And the goal is for us to unmask, right? And so unmasking allows us to be able to be true to ourselves, true to our communities, true to our other sisters, true to our families. You know what I'm saying? And so, with that being said, it's just literally when we think about how our organizations do things, just create silence, like moments of silence in that, have opportunities to create those remembrance in space that we able to just talk about it when we're experiencing something, and don't act as if things is not bothering people. Oftentimes people are afraid to say what they feel about a loss because they're afraid of hurting other people's feelings. But statistics actually shows that when you go and say what you are thinking and experiencing, the other person is literally thinking and experiencing the same thing, but they're so busy trying to withhold and protect the other person that they miss opportunities to just share and be okay and normalize what they're actually experiencing. So again, just creating that space, speaking what's on your mind, acknowledging that this hurts, and whatever hurts, and again, try to continue to ask for help and support in that process.
Thank you. I think that is so important. As you were talking, it literally hit me the amount of loss that we've experienced within our chapter. And we've only been in existence for 5 years. One of our charter members passed on. Um, and there are times where I recognize some of us just kind of kept moving. Or I recognize as the president of our chapter, we have a scholarship in honor of her. And we did it because of who she was, not because she passed. But she did ultimately pass. And I realize I take it personal when people don't support it. Like literally, that came to me. This is a total transparent moment, everybody. It just kind of came to me like, I don't understand how you can't be 10 toes down to support something in honor of her because of who she was and what she represented. But to Cheryl's point, everyone is different. People process different. People had different relationships with her. We've grown. There's individuals that came around after she was already gone. So they don't hold the same space that I hold. But I recognize for me, I'm like, you got to be way up here with this. This is not a place that you have room to slack. But it's probably because of how I'm processing my grief, because when it occurred, I had to keep going. It wasn't a space where I got to kind of slow down and pause. So that was just very reflective for me in the moment. So y'all all got it live.
And if you mind me to just, piggyback off of you, Latifa, it's sometimes we wear our expression, right, on our face, right? And so offering a safe space, right? Offering that safe face when you are asking something of someone. Like someone wants to feel safe when they want to talk about a moment, or when they want to grieve, or they want to talk about loss, right? But if they don't feel safe to do that, fear of judgment, right? Fear of like, oh, why would she feel that way? Or why would she kind of like, like it's like, yes, this scholarship, our lost sister, why aren't we 10 toes down about this? But again, something else could be going on. And it's like, I would love to be 10 toes down, but I can't. But I see that face that Latifah's making, and like, I'm afraid to say no. But then we hit burnout, right? And then we hit like, oh my God, now I took on another thing that I couldn't do just because I don't want to disappoint my sister, right? And I know that she's real gun ho about this. I know that's what this is what, and we don't want to disappoint. So then we hit the burnout part where we're like, now I'm doing too much. But I can't tell her I'm doing too much because then there's that fear of judgment all over again, right? So I just think as sisters, we have to be mindful of this, of the things that we're carrying, some of us can't help the face, right? That's a thing, but being very transparent, like Latifah, just being very transparent about like, this is what I'm feeling. But again, not everybody's in that same space. And I think as sisters, we do more harm, when we don't allow that safe space for sisters to feel like they can actually come and talk, or without that judgment of other sisters around, because they've seen faces being made when they say something, or there's things like that. So we just want to be mindful of the spaces that we're creating, for our sisters. And I think, that definitely part of the healing process in terms of what we go through. I mean, as women, it's just what we go through.
It's what we go through. We're women, we're mothers, we're aunties, we're wives. We're carrying so much. And I think that word that you mentioned about assumptions, we make assumptions that the people around us are thinking what we're thinking and feeling what we're feeling, and experiencing things the way that we're experiencing. And that just is not the case. Additionally, sometimes we're all so busy doing this work that we're not building the relationship, right? So we're all grounded in service, but we are also sisterhoods. And so, how do you take that balance of making sure that we're building strong relationships among one another, so that it is easy to relate to each other, so that I do know you, not, you may or may not know somebody like an open book, but I do know some of the dynamics that you're going through. And when I know you better, I can deal with you better. I can have more compassion because I have a different level of understanding. So, can we talk about some of the ways that we build healthy relationships so that we can have those safe spaces that people authentically feel like I can unmask and be honest about what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling?
Latifah, repeat the beginning. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. How do we create safe spaces? Before we create the safe space, how do we build relationships within sisterhood so that we can create safe spaces so people can authentically take their mask off? Because we were talking about, you can't be fake. You can't, like, don't fake it, because people are going to know and they're not going to be honest with you. But inside of sisterhood and inside of our organizations, what are some ways that women can focus on building healthy relationships so that those spaces are safe for another sister to unmask?
I mean, I would say intentional space outside of service. Very intentional space outside of service, meaning bringing outsiders in, workshops. This is, just different things that create those bonds, right? That creates that. Let's just kind of throw away the service hat for a second. Let's just have fun. Let's just get to know each other. Like, let's just get to do this without mentioning our organizations, without going through, here's what we did for, what are we doing for each other? Like, let's play games where we get to know each other. Let me see your goofy side. Let me see your soft side, right? Like, let me see you karaoke, to Rick James and Tina Marie, right? Like, let me see you do that. And let's laugh about it, right? So I just think it's cutting down the hours sometimes, and being okay with, what, I want you to take on this project and this project, and being okay with no, without why. if I want to do, if I can't do this and I'm saying no, not to follow up with a why, like, why can't you, right? A no's a no. And I think sometimes we have to be okay with that within the organizations, because not everything needs an explanation, right? I know why I said no, because honestly, we wouldn't be here if we didn't want to do the work, right? If we didn't want to be part of it, if we didn't want to be service oriented. But if I'm saying no, it's coming from a place of like, I just can't do it, and being okay with that without feeling judged, or without feeling like I'm doing something wrong, or I'm disappointing somebody, or things like that. So creating just those very healthy spaces, and just being okay with just outside and just getting to know people, just getting to know the boys and the girls and the babies and your kids and things like that, but cutting off the service hours for a little bit, Like this is part of our organization. Yes, we do service, but man, we do other things too, right? This is like really my sister. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Yes, I have 2 short words: hello and no gossip. Like, I think in organizations, us as women, we have a way. I guess I got more than 2 words. Here we go with the therapist piece. This is funny. But I think as as women, we have a way of just being catty and can be mean. Like we just could be mean. And because our unhealed parts of us show up. That's why I'm an advocate of therapy. We only give what we got. You know what I'm saying? If you ask me for $1 and I got 50 cents, I can't give you the dollar. And then I got a choice to give you the 50 cent, right? And so a lot of times people, you know, we could just as women, we could be catty. And I know, from just say hello is nice, hello. And be careful and be mindful of the gossip because people around you, other women are around you, are listening to you gossip, right? And so you're supposed to talk to a person, not about a person. You know what I'm saying? And if you can't talk to that person, then that means you're talking about them. You know what I'm saying? And that is gossip. And so we have to be careful about that because again, like I said, there's women on either side of us most times when we're in meetings and things like that, and they can hear that. And so when you're asking to create a safe space and I hear another woman talking about somebody, that person and that person listening is no longer a safe space. Right. And so now you did minus 2 women, 3 women sitting at the table or whatever the case may be. That's no longer a safe space. And not to mention, didn't even say hello. Not to mention this cheer is for you, or you know what I mean? Like those type of basic etiquettes of friendships and sisterhoods and yeah, so that's my 3 cents.
I love it. I
You
love it.
said 2,
I
I
love
said
it.
3. So I'm going to do 3, and Cheryl going to get 4. Go ahead.
I'm moving forward. Yep,
That's all right.
yep.
Pull it in with your 4 cents. Come on.
There we go. But no, I feel for me, like safe space is, especially within our organization, like, we have a very small chapter. So we know when somebody usually is like messaging a lot and then they kind of just like stop messaging or go ghost. And you're like, oh, where's this person been? I am somebody that's like, check in. That's all you need to do, right? You don't need to, create a narrative, right? Sometimes we're like, oh, this person's missing. I wonder A, B, and C. And we start creating these narratives around why somebody's not somewhere instead of just saying, hey, how are you doing today? You need anything, right? I think another thing that we do within just being service oriented, we feel like we know what people need before people tell us. And it's like, well, did you ask the question? Did they say they needed A, B, or C, or is that something that you're assuming? So I think that's also a part of being in a safe space is knowing like, this person isn't just going to assume the things that I need. They're actually going to hear me and maybe assist me in actual the things that I want or the things that I need without just, saying, hey, I thought you needed this. Here you go. And it's like, I appreciate it, but that's not really helping me in this moment right now. So I think that is definitely also another important aspect of like when you're wanting to create that safe space for anybody is actually knowing what that person really needs.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so Ms. Sparks put in the chat that respecting one's space is important sometimes because we are the helpers. We also think we're supposed to fix everything. And sometimes that's not what's required. Sometimes she's not asking to be fixed. Sometimes she wants to sit in it. Sometimes she just needs to know it's okay for me to sit. It's okay for me to fall back. That is very important. Very important. So we're doing this webinar. We do these every year during the month of March when we're celebrating finer womanhood. And so that's one of the highest ideals of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, as we all know. And so how do we make or take the opportunity to seek peace and prioritize mental health within our organizations? And so some of it I heard Dr. Givner saying, creating safe spaces, talking to people, just kind of identifying this is that quiet time that we're having. We're having a moment of silence to honor what we're going through. Are there any other practical tools that you all can offer that people can take with them into community to make certain that we are prioritizing mental health and not taking it for granted?
My favorite, and you ain't gonna like it. Um, stop watching TV. So that's a real thing though, but it is monitoring how much you are digesting into your spirit, because you become those things.
Mhm.
So that becomes social media, right? That becomes TV, even music, right? We become like our minds are always working, they're always moving as long as we're alive. We want our brains to do those things. And so you have to remember you're going to become all of those things. Not to mention, if you're a clinician or a provider, we're digesting all of that energy into us. And then we sit and we watch, I don't. Well, we watch, people often say mindless TV. There's really no such thing. It's going to be a part of your body. It's going to be a part of your spirit. It's going to start to become a part of your tongue. And so when you're saying you want peace, how do you ask for peace when you're being inundated by all of this energy that you cannot control? And then you wonder why you can't eat, or you wonder why you're anxious, or you wonder why you got a headache, or you wonder why you can't sleep. All of those things that you just took in is a part of your body and your system now. And so I think people need to really take that serious around what are they digesting and ingesting around things they cannot control, but they actually can control, because nothing that we do, as long as we are alive, is mindless.
Mhm. I love that. I love that. And we're so quick to say what the kids need to do. Kids get too much screen time, but we don't practice those same boundaries amongst ourselves. We do digest a lot, a lot. I was actually with a group of women last night and we were talking about the impact that the music has on you. And so one particular woman was talking about an area of struggle, but then when she disclosed what she was listening to, everybody was like, well, no wonder you struggling. Like you letting this right in. Like you're giving it space. And um for me, I'm learning the importance of quiet time. Right. So it's not about, am I listening to jazz music? Am I listening to peaceful music? Can I sit in quiet? Can I sit with me without anything else? I think that that is so important. And one of my therapists starts us off with, well, if you can't do 5 minutes of quiet, then you do 1 minute of quiet until you can build up to 5 minutes of quiet. And I was surprised at the number of people that literally were admitting 1 minute of silence is too much. Right. So it speaks to that noise that you're speaking about, and the impact that it has on us. Did anyone else? Yes, Tish.
And listen, tell me when I'm going off. Cause okay. So normalizing, right? Normalizing the therapy process. One thing, couple of things, a few things that I've struggled with. What happens in this house stays in this house. That is an old school mindset. Now I can't tell who's on I mean, I can look, but as far as age goes, right? Age differences, whatever happens in this house stays in this house. That has created generational trauma for all of us, right? Because it's hurting us mentally, it's hurting us physically, and our kids aren't wanting to talk about what's happening with them because they're not allowed to talk about it once they get back home, right? I work with a lot of the younger adults and a lot of the adolescents, and a lot of my babies, they come in but like you said, they're babies to me, but they come in and they have an older parent, and when I say older, 60 maybe, or, late 50s, and they struggle with a lot of things, right? And a lot of their parents are like, don't you go and tell those people our business. Like, don't you go in there and tell them that, where they need an outlet, because at home, mom or dad doesn't understand that I'm struggling with my identity. I might be struggling with my gender identity. I'm struggling with how I look. I'm struggling with keeping up with what's on this TV. I'm struggling with, what media, how media wants me to look. I'm struggling with who wants me and she's the pretty girl. I'm, things like that. And my parents are like, no, you're fine. You're okay. Right. And so having conversations, I think, is so important. Just having the conversation about how important mental health is. And these kids are struggling, and I know that a lot of older adults want to, kind of put it into something else. Like, I don't know, they're okay, they're fine. Oh, house is fine, but every day they go home, they see mom and dad screaming and yelling at each other. They go home, mom is isolating herself. She's withdrawn. She's working 10 different jobs and she never sees mom, right? We're struggling to eat every day. We're doing so many things are happening, and we're not being open enough with the younger kids to say, like, yes, I understand that something's going on. Keeping up with your peers, trying to keep up with them in the schools and understand what they have going on. Parents just aren't understanding. So I would say just continue to have the conversation that if a child or an adolescent is saying, like, you know what, I want to talk to somebody, let them, let them. It's not that they're going to go dish your family stuff or they're not going to go air out your family. It's let them, because it might be something that you just quite honestly can't understand. But then join in that session, right? At some point, try to understand. And I think that that's the biggest issue, is parents aren't trying to understand what their kids are going through. It's their issue, fix them. It's not. We have to do this together. And again, Black folks not getting therapy. Black people don't see therapists, so normalizing that, right? And I love that we got so many of us now working in the field and seeing especially our Black men coming in. I love my babies that come in, and I'm like, yes, young man, let's do this. So it's slowly getting there with more talk about it being okay. It's okay not to be okay type situation, but we have so much more work to do, to get our people where we need to be.
Absolutely. There's so much work to be done. I used to feel convicted because the only time we were talking about mental health in terms of organization wide was in May, because it's Mental Health Awareness Month. And I'm like, nah, the way mental health is hitting the Black community, we can't just highlight this in May. This has to be something that we're having open discussion about, that we're making awareness about. And it's part of the reason why we chose to have this discussion for our critical conversation, because women are suffering in silence. So often, we get together, we have a project or we have a meeting, and then you're on your way to your car, and it's that conversation in the parking lot. And sometimes we're in the parking lot an hour and a half, leaning on the car, pulling our shoes off, because that outlet, that safe space, hearing somebody talk about what they're going through that doesn't have anything to do with what was on the agenda at the meeting, doesn't have anything to do with what you publicly know that they're going through. But you hit these pockets, these moments where she feels free to talk, and the conversation just goes and goes, and you're connecting and you're relating. But those outlets are so important. And it's very much a part of the community that we create for each other within our organizations. And so, we mentioned it earlier. Yes, we do service, and yes, we have, initiatives that we have to focus on. But the root of our why for our organizations is still rooted in that sisterhood as well. Building those relationships and being a sister. Within Zeta, we call it being a friend to man, and that has to be a core of what we do for each other. So I appreciate you highlighting how it shows up in the students, in the schools, how it shows up intergenerationally, because children today are different than the way that their parents were, and what they need might not be what I needed. We talk about, and Cheryl mentioned it earlier, she's in this field because she needs to become what she needed when she needed it and it wasn't here. right? And so we still have to do those things to become what we know. And as Black women therapists, there is a demographic of people that you all can relate to in ways that people, other therapists might not be able to relate to them. So I think it's so awesome that you all are in this space. And there's many other women who are listening to this live who are life coaches, who are educators, who are in different spaces. We're in ministry where we now have the letters behind our names, but just like your beautician or your barber, oftentimes you become that safe space to hear what different people are going through. So I thank you all for coming tonight, for talking about different practical coping tools, for letting us all know that what we're experiencing is very normal, right? So helping us normalize what is happening and that the need for therapy isn't problematic, right? That is normal. You should have someone in a healthy space that you can talk through what you're experiencing. And what's great about it is they can talk to you about the things that are frustrating you, but with relationship, they can check you on, well, sis, this is you got to do some inner work about what's going on with you. And so you may have some issues with, well, this is that and that's that. But maybe it's what you're bringing to the table that is causing these responses and these reactions to happen. So I think all of it together is very important. So before we close out, does anyone have anything additional that you'd like to, share, or any closing comments to leave with our viewers?
I think I'm gonna leave the idea of therapy, right? Of us trying to change that stereotype of like, well, I've heard it so many times. Well, something's wrong with me because I'm in therapy. There doesn't have to be anything wrong with you to be in therapy. There may just be things, behaviors that you've taught yourself over the years that aren't healthy, and you're starting to realize it. You're starting to have that self-awareness of like, how I've been going about this is all wrong. I need to change it. So I think changing that stereotype that therapy is only needed when something is wrong, that needs to go away. Therapy can be when you're happy, when you're sad, it can be for anything, right?
Mhm.
So I think that's one thing I'll take away. If you're going through something, if you're not going through something, therapy can be anything you make it. I think that's also another thing of like, if you get with a therapist and you're like, I'm not really jiving with this person, that's okay. Find the person that aligns with you and that is going to help you on your journey in the way that you need to. That is one thing I learned early on, is like, every therapist is not for everybody, but also even every client is not for every therapist. So just
Mhm.
like knowing that also as well. So
Awesome. I love it. Thank you.
I would say, as far as this normalizing therapy, don't forget about our aging parents, our aging aunties, our aging uncles. When they were once able to do all the things, and as they get older, those things no longer are easy to them. There's aches, there's ailments, and they too struggle. But they are also part of that generation of like, we don't talk to people. But encouraging them to talk, encouraging them to seek that professional support, encouraging them like, yes, you got something going on. You're not the same person you were, right? And so encouraging our older generation of folks in our churches, in our homes, in our communities to seek that support is something that I am very passionate about. I think that we need to do more of, because they're not the same people, right? And they're struggling with that, but they're not going to talk to anybody because that's not what they want to do. That's not how they do things. But encouraging them, like, it's okay. It's okay to be frustrated that you can't do that anymore. It's okay to be sad that you can't do that anymore. You're not the same person, and that's okay. So I would like to leave with that. Like, don't forget about our aging adults in our life, our aging aunties, uncles, parents. Don't forget about the older generation of folks who they're not that easy to go to therapy. They're not
Right.
that convincing.
Right. There's going to be us, and we're the next
Absolutely.
aging community.
And I just want to say one thing too is, again, knowing that that I run a psychiatric outpatient clinic, is that I also want to normalize being able to see a psychiatrist. There is some people that actually need to take medication, and that also not being shunned or frowned upon or embarrassed or even made fun of. Like, I have clients that I often hear family members tell their family, "Did you take your meds?" You know, those type of things to embarrass them, or because something else is going on. Oh, they must be crazy. And so just being mindful of like words that cause harm, even though people often say it wasn't my intent, it's still how it landed. And so normalizing people that have to see a psychiatrist is also important. And that's okay too. Taking your meds is also a way to obtain peace, and it also is a way to obtain your ability to function again. And I know Cheryl said the right therapist might not be a good fit, but I'm also a firm believer that a psychiatrist is also, you do your homework. I know the psychiatrist that works for me, we all agree that the client is the expert on themselves. And if you're not in an environment where that is enhanced, then run. Because you're the expert of you. You're with yourself. You know what you're going through and what you need. And you don't need nobody telling you what you need and what you don't want to do. So be in a place that a person is able to advocate for themselves, allow a place that's going to be able to see you and validate you, and be in a place that's not going to make fun of you or continue to demean you because of you need some extra support when it comes to psychotropics and things like that.
I love it. I love it. You're absolutely right because people do, make jokes about it, not thinking about how that impacts because you don't know who's in the room who may be taking medication while you're having your side conversation, also known as gossip, and the impact that it could have on someone who is listening in the space. I thank you all so much for your time, for your expertise, for the nuggets. For our audience, I hope that this conversation reminds us that what should be normal is taking care of our mental health. It should be normal to seek out the supports that you need so that we can have that balance in our lives, so that we can be our best selves and that we can thrive in the environments that we're called to, and we can walk in our purpose effectively. So again, I thank you all for coming and representing the different fields that you work in, the different organizations that you support for D9. It's just an open conversation that I think is really, really important. So if anyone is just now catching this, you can definitely catch out the replay, but it will also be on our YouTube channel as well. So thank you all so much for your time, for your expertise, and all of you for watching and listening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.